Evidence secured at marker 4. Advise command we are holding the scene.
Copy that. It's getting heavier out here.
He walked in fully believing his digital blackout erased everything. Listen, he hijacked the wireless network, blinding every block camera and dismantling the alarm. Doorbell video captured a distinct tool resting in his front pocket. Retired police analysts conclude this device severed connectivity for the surrounding homes the second he approached. He choreographed the entire operation, accounting for resident schedules, lines of sight, camera placements, and precise timing to prevent failure. He missed exactly one detail. He miscalculated a single variable, trusting an assumption so deeply he never stopped to verify it. That specific blind spot handed federal agents a direct line to his identity. Following that lead allowed investigators to retrieve a piece of evidence he firmly believed no longer existed. This recovered item clearly displays his face, his physical build, and his distinct characteristics. It also captures that front pocket tool, an item federal agents currently track. Possessing it violates federal communications statutes, leaving a financial paper trail he completely underestimated. He blocked the transmission. He assumed the job was finished. He miscalculated. The Bureau holds that footage. They know what it reveals, and it steers the entire probe right now. This evidence shifts the entire federal manhunt toward one specific timeline. That timeline centers on Nancy Guthrie. If you follow this investigation, you know the events spanning the night of February 1st into the early morning hours of February 2nd in Tucson, Arizona. She simply vanished from her residence. Those closest to the 66-year-old woman called her sharp, independent, and fiercely devoted to her relatives. Detectives located absolutely zero evidence of a physical altercation. A home alarm system actively protected the property, alongside a doorbell lens and multiple street-facing neighbor cameras perfectly positioned to capture any movement. They should have recorded everything. Yet what detectives discovered while collecting those video files shattered their basic assumptions about the crime scene. Instead of a simple blank recording, investigators encountered a highly concerning technical anomaly. A blank recording just means the lens missed the subject. This data indicated a completely different reality. The intruder actively blinded the entire digital perimeter. How did he execute that blackout? Detectives immediately began knocking on doors, asking surrounding residents to hand over surveillance files from that time frame. A distinct timeline emerged, one that authorities kept strictly confidential during the initial phases, but this specific detail quickly became the primary focus of the entire federal manhunt. Several property owners confirmed an identical problem: simultaneous network failures. This struck multiple households across different addresses simultaneously, causing internet drops during the exact same overnight window. We dismiss coincidences here. This represents a hard data point. As detectives scrutinized this overlap, they realized these neighborhood camera failures stemmed from a coordinated tactical strike rather than bad luck. It required deliberate action. The resident operating the Ring device closest to the Guthrie house held the most crucial angle, yet Amazon classified that specific video file as unavailable during the overnight timeframe of February 1st. The file avoided corruption, skipped glitches, and bypassed hardware malfunctions entirely. The application simply read, "unavailable." That specific phrasing matters. It matters because of how the hardware communicates. Operating normally on a wireless network, Ring devices transmit and secure video files directly to Amazon cloud servers. Dropping that connection stops transmission. Certain Ring units utilize a limited local memory buffer, though without steady internet, that unsaved capture rapidly deletes or overwrites itself. Seeing an unavailable status on an active account almost always guarantees a single, specific scenario. The hardware retained full power. It operated perfectly, yet it lacked internet access during the exact minutes the suspect approached the house. This leaves federal agents wrestling with the critical question driving this entire case from day one. What deliberately severed that connection? A signal blocker works by blasting radio frequency static across the exact same spectrum utilized by wireless networks. Everyday consumer networks power, Ring devices, Nest doorbells, and standard smart home alarm grids. These systems rely almost exclusively on two specific bandwidths, 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz. A blocker drowns those channels in heavy interference, overpowering the actual signal and forcing every connected device within its reach to act like the internet simply vanished. You can purchase a consumer-level blocker online for under $100. It projects a disruption radius spanning a few dozen to several hundred feet. Output strength and the physical density of surrounding architecture ultimately determine that exact transmission range. Parked on a standard residential street, a mid-level blocker operating from a vehicle easily blankets multiple properties at the exact same time. The most dangerous tactical element lies in the execution. These devices operate in total silence. You hear nothing, you see no flashing lights, and the system issues zero push notifications to warn you. A homeowner sleeping 2 doors down remains completely unaware. They wake up, open their smartphone application, and see missing footage at 2 in the morning. That represents a calculated, tactical strike, not a random system failure. He thought he vanished flawlessly. He smashed the camera, killed the feed, and faded into the dark. But he forgot the digital ghosts. His oversight begins here. Multiple homeowners, not just one, but several, reported simultaneous internet dropouts across that exact neighborhood on that specific night. Forensic experts label this a geographic cluster, radiating from a precise bullseye. Finding that center point is the exact diagnostic puzzle the FBI exists to solve. Who anchored it? The Bureau delivered the answer by declassifying security lens captures pulled directly from Nancy Guthrie's front entryway. If you caught that clip, and considering the massive public frenzy surrounding this manhunt, you likely already have. One anomaly burrows into your brain. A shadowed silhouette approaches the threshold, and protruding from his coat pocket sits an undisguised piece of hardware. Casual observers immediately wrote off the item as an everyday smartphone, perhaps carelessly jutting out into view. Federal agents do not glance, they dissect. Rigorous scrutiny proved the item defies basic cellular physics, sporting the wrong physical dimensions and a completely unnatural carriage angle. One seasoned veteran of the badge examined the visual evidence and subsequently presented a chilling alternative hypothesis to the public. Upon breaking down the frames, retired Detective Lisa Miller deduced the distinct antenna protruding from the prowler's clothing explicitly ruled out cellular devices. Her formal evaluation? She labeled it, quote, a small handheld radio, a walkie-talkie two-way communication. That specific tactical hardware fundamentally shifts the entire investigation's trajectory, cementing an angle Detective Miller voiced without a moment of hesitation. It aligns perfectly with her suspicion that the individual dubbed porch monster brought backup. Let that terrifying implication sink in. If this stalker approached Nancy Guthrie's home alone, a standard cell phone handles texts and data perfectly. You simply do not haul analog broadcasting equipment to a strictly one-man job. Why risk the bulky gear? Because a vintage, short-distance transceiver, shielded from tracking simply because it bypasses modern tower grids entirely, protects the operator from conventional corporate telecommunications subpoenas. It functions as the ultimate shadow tool, allowing instant conversational pinging with a nearby partner while generating zero digital footprint through a cellular provider. It exists for one singular purpose: orchestrating movements with a secondary player. That means a getaway driver idling in a sedan, or a lookout crouched behind the nearest fence line. If Detective Miller correctly diagnosed this hardware, and other analysts back her accomplice theory, the horror inflicted upon Nancy Guthrie on the evening of February 1st never involved an isolated madman acting purely on impulse. It operated as a meticulously synchronized strike. Yet, that sinister reality directly feeds an even broader, more terrifying tactical question. Hauling a transceiver to whisper commands differs vastly from deploying specialized hardware engineered to suffocate the broadband capabilities of an entire residential block. The intruder might have carried twin gadgets, or he wielded one highly modified instrument, executing a dual-pronged electronic assault. Black market Wi-Fi signal suppressors completely violate federal communications statutes. though underground internet vendors readily supply them. Judging by public admissions from Sheriff Nanos, tracing that specific hardware purchase remains a highly viable operational objective. He stated plainly, "I've not looked at that closely, but yeah, I know that my team has looked at it with the FBI, every angle." How deep does this digital sabotage actually run?
Tonight, in the search for new clues, several of Nancy Guthrie's neighbors tell NBC News investigators returned this week, asking them about any potential internet issues the night of Nancy's disappearance. The homeowners say the agents told them several neighbors mentioned glitches with their internet that night. One of those neighbors tells us when they checked on their Ring cameras, this one here, the one closest to Nancy's property, said not available during the overnight hours of the abduction.
Here's the jammer. Hold it up here. You turn it on.
Security tech consultant Ted Nearhouse showed us how a Wi-Fi jammer can interfere with internet signal and home surveillance cameras.
And you will see it go out. So that's what it looks like. It'll say not available or something along those lines.
But Nearhouse says he's skeptical a Wi-Fi jammer was used in Nancy's abduction.
If they turned that thing on when they pulled up, you'd never have any video on any camera. So that's why I don't think anything was jammed.
Some online sleuths have pointed out it appears there could be something in the suspect's pocket. We asked the sheriff about that earlier this week.
Did he have a Wi-Fi jammer, a walkie-talkie? Have you been able to figure?
I've not looked at it that closely. But yeah, I know that my team has looked at it with the FBI, every angle.
That repeated phrasing operates as an outright admission that the localized frequency interference hypothesis remains actively under intense official scrutiny. It verifies federal intelligence units joined the specific inquiry, and not a single commanding officer dares dismiss the possibility to the press. But what happens when a flawless plan encounters an invisible trap? This brings us to the predator's fatal miscalculation, the one invisible, technological snare he arrogantly assumed he had already dismantled. We must piece together the exact configuration of Nancy Guthrie's perimeter defenses, utilizing the unclassified briefings provided by both current detectives and former bureau experts. Nancy protected her property with surveillance monitors and a comprehensive alarm grid. Her entryway utilized a specialized Nest video doorbell, engineered to continually beam live visual data straight into Google's corporate servers whenever the network link held steady. Pay close attention to this architectural quirk of the Nest ecosystem, because the attacker fatally underestimated the resilient nature of modern tech. The average criminal calculates that visual evidence exists strictly within two isolated repositories. They believe data sits solely on the tangible hardware mounted to the brick, and simultaneously within the linked virtual cloud platform. Smash the lens, and you kill the physical drive. Jam the Wi-Fi signal, and those crucial files never reach the online vault. Therefore, suffocating the bandwidth before physically ripping the lens off the wall theoretically guarantees total evidentiary erasure. Logic dictates that sequence ensures absolute invisibility. Logic is entirely wrong. The intruder failed to realize, much like the general public, that Google's proprietary surveillance architecture actively hoards information far beyond standard consumer synchronization channels. How did they catch his face? Federal cyber teams partnered directly with the tech giant to extract what authorities formally dubbed residual data, trapped deep within unseen operational frameworks. They bypassed the standard cloud subscription entirely, and they certainly didn't need the pulverized doorway equipment. Instead, they salvaged digital ghosts, microscopic code fragments permanently embedded inside Google's root architecture that survive long after the primary connection drops. These fragments stubbornly cling to the servers regardless of active cloud subscriptions, outlasting even the violent removal of the plastic casing from the porch. That miraculous extraction delivered the tape we are all watching today. The chilling playback captured the stalker's physical framework, his raw facial features, the distinct facial hair, the unmistakable brow line, the jewelry wrapped around his smallest finger, and that controversial gadget sitting openly in his jacket. Every damning pixel resurrected from residual back-end memory traces. The man approaching that porch thought he accounted for absolutely everything, leaving zero digital witnesses behind. He believed a jam signal and physical destruction eliminated the camera threat, completely unaware of the ghost in the machine. Google and the FBI recovered that erased footage, turning it into the centerpiece of an active missing person investigation. Think about the massive implications of that fact for a second. It reveals exactly who we are hunting. He understood Ring cameras. He knew how cloud-connected home security systems operated. He grasped Wi-Fi signal architecture well enough to deploy a disruption device or exploit environmental conditions to kill the feed. He remained cautious enough to approach the front door, the property's most visibly exposed entry point, with empty hands, carrying nothing that would broadcast a forced entry attempt to any watchful lens. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent and criminal profiler Jim Clemente zeroed in on this specific behavioral detail. Quote, "He was not prepared to deal with the door camera. He did not have tools in his hands to force his way into the house in the front." We need to unpack that quote right now. On a surface read, it seems to contradict his extreme preparation, but what exactly is Clemente pointing to? The suspect approached the front door, acting like he expected it to open. No forced entry, no break-in. He designed his approach to look exactly like a casual visit from someone possessing a legitimate reason to stand there. That dramatically shifts the profile away from a random opportunist. This behavior isolates a suspect who either knew Nancy, tracked her daily routines, or possessed enough inside knowledge to believe a front door approach would actually work. That leads straight to another massive detail analysts keep flagging. If the attacker knew Nancy well enough, he probably knew her home security setup, including whether her cameras lacked an active cloud subscription. Stop and weigh the operational impact of that. If the planner had solid intelligence that Nancy's doorbell camera was not actively syncing video to the cloud, whether they knew her household, stood inside her home previously, or extracted that intel from a mutual contact, they would treat that camera as a completely dead device. It functioned purely as a psychological deterrent mounted on the wall. They thought it recorded nothing anyone could retrieve. That assumption became a fatal miscalculation. Residual back-end data in Google's infrastructure, those invisible digital traces, survive regardless of whether the homeowner pays for a storage plan, regardless of whether the system sits offline, and regardless of whether the physical device remains bolted to the wall, leaving the killer completely exposed to what happened next. The data survived. The FBI extracted the video, and now you are staring right at it. Let's talk knowledge. Specifically, what did this suspect have to know to pull this off? The emerging evidentiary pattern doesn't point to an amateur improvising at the wrong house. This attacker did serious homework. The neighbor's Ring camera, the exact lens positioned closest to Nancy's home, suddenly went dark during the critical overnight window.
This one here, the one closest to Nancy's property, said not available during the overnight hours of the abduction.
Here in their backyard, you can actually see Nancy's home. It's that brick house there. Experts tell us it would likely take a professional-grade Wi-Fi jammer to knock out internet all the way to the back of this property.
Whether that was because of a jammed signal or a coincidental outage is something investigators are still working to conclusively establish. But law enforcement considers multiple reports of internet disruptions across several surrounding homes during that precise window a coordinated pattern. The intruder either neutralized that specific camera or benefited from a neighborhood blackout that aggressively strains belief. Add the fact that Nancy's own Nest doorbell likely lacked an active cloud subscription, meaning under normal operational standards. Nobody expected that system to retain local footage, exposing critical insider knowledge and begging the ultimate question: how did he know? It's a reasonable investigative read. Whoever planned this understood the doorbell posed zero threat. Then consider the approach. He carried absolutely no tools for a forced front entry. No crowbar, no pry tool, and zero aggression shown to functioning cameras. The shadowy figure strolled up, matching the exact posture and empty hands of an arriving guest. You do not fake that randomly. That proves he knew what typical visitors looked like approaching this woman's door. Count them. 4 distinct layers of specialized knowledge. Any single element in isolation might be a lucky guess. Stacked together, that screams deep familiarity. We are hunting an individual who either knew Nancy Guthrie directly or received detailed intelligence from someone who did. This specific intersection of facts is exactly what former FBI personnel and retired analysts consistently flag across public statements. A phantom orchestrating an operation at this technical level does not fit the behavioral profile of a stranger. Stranger abductions are relentlessly horrific, but they look entirely different. They unfold faster, lack technical choreography, rely on brute force, and definitely skip neighborhood-wide Wi-Fi signal disruptions. A camera he thought was dead caught a chillingly confident walk straight to the front door, bypassing hidden entryways. It proved a preemptive mastery of the victim's security setup. To the seasoned professionals who analyze criminal behavior for a living, this looks like an operation orchestrated by somebody holding a map. Not a paper map, a knowledge map. A blueprint detailing NY's routines, her house, her security flaws, and her vulnerabilities. Consider the timeline that intelligence demands. You do not learn which security camera covers what angle during one drive-by. You cannot memorize somebody's home security grid from a single visit. You don't map out a person's nighttime routine just watching lights cut out, waiting until the house goes completely silent, holding position until that window of vulnerability opens without triggering observation, which means that well before February 1st, somebody was already watching this house. They weren't necessarily standing outside holding binoculars. In modern forensics, physical surveillance is far less cinematic. It can be an unremarkable car parked down the block across different days. It can be a slow, steady drive past the property, timing when the neighborhood goes dark. It can be intelligence gathered conversationally from someone who had legitimate access to Nancy and her home, building a profile without Nancy ever realizing. The question investigators are aggressively working to answer isn't just who stepped up to that door on February 1st, who was watching in the weeks prior, because the sheer level of methodical preparation clearly visible here does not emerge from one reconnaissance run. It emerges from carefully accumulated intelligence. Accumulated intelligence guarantees one vulnerability: exposure. That means multiple physical appearances in a neighborhood, careless conversations, fleeting interactions, digital footprints. The FBI does not actually need to know exactly what the suspect observed or when. They simply need hard evidence proving he, or someone in his network, was physically near Nancy Guthrie's life before that night. Pulling cell tower records, scanning automated license plate readers, and pulling purchase logs from local businesses. The digital residue of human presence tracked over time. The exact same forensic infrastructure that recovered footage from a camera he believed was dead is perfectly capable of placing him near the neighborhood on prior dates. He may have been incredibly careful when he struck on February 1st, but was he just as careful on every scouting visit prior? Will his tools betray him? Wi-Fi jammers are not hard to track down. The internet is absolutely flooded with them on gray markets, easily found across international e-commerce platforms, openly sold under vague product descriptions, deliberately crafted to bypass search algorithms. They aren't exotic tech. A fully functional Wi-Fi jammer costs under $100, ships internationally, and easily arrives straight into the United States without triggering a customs flag, unless authorities are watching. But here is the ultimate trap hiding inside that digital purchase trail. The federal ban goes beyond simply using them. Under 47 U.S.C. Section 302A, Section 302 of the Communications Act, it is illegal to manufacture, import, market, sell, or even operate signal jamming devices anywhere inside the United States. This is the statute the FCC directly enforces against all jammer activity, covering the entire supply chain from the exact moment a device is imported to the second it is physically switched on. Alongside 47 CFR Part 15, the FCC rules governing unlicensed electronics prohibits the operation of absolutely any device that knowingly causes harmful interference to licensed communications, exactly what a Wi-Fi jammer does. What that means in practical investigative terms is every single step from a manufacturer to domestic use constitutes a federal violation, and federal violations always leave permanent federal records, import documents, traceable payment processing, a final delivery address, and the specific account registration tied to the purchase. In some specific cases, it leaves behind device identifiers that match right back to a purchase if the hardware is ever recovered. Now, is a Wi-Fi jammer the confirmed explanation for exactly what happened to those cameras? No, it hasn't been officially confirmed. Law enforcement hasn't publicly stated that a jammer was definitively used. What is officially confirmed is multiple homeowners reported internet disruptions. The neighbor's Ring camera positioned perfectly nearest to NY's home abruptly captured absolutely no available footage during that exact overnight window. Right now, the FBI and the sheriff's office are actively examining the jammer theory alongside all possibilities. That confirmation gap matters. Responsible analysis of this active case requires distinguishing between established facts and what is being investigated, and this channel does not blur lines. What is fully established? Suspicious camera disruptions happened. The Bureau knows about them. They are actively looking. What is currently being investigated is whether those network disruptions were deliberate, what exactly caused them, and crucially whether a fully traceable electronic device caused those blackouts. The distinction is incredibly important, but so is this reality. If a jammer was actually used and purchased through any traceable online channel, utilizing electronic payment methods, or tied to a delivery address, the intruder thought he wiped his digital footprint from existence, but he never calculated what the FBI can achieve using fierce subpoena power and international mutual legal assistance treaties to force global platforms into surrendering hidden data. The suspect assumed he permanently deleted the video. He figured he neutralized the cameras. He never thought twice about the digital receipts. Investigators successfully extracted undeniable footage straight from residual back-end data buried inside Google servers, securing the file without an active cloud subscription long after the suspect physically destroyed the camera. The resulting video looks sharp enough that federal agents pushed it straight to the public, demanding help to identify this man. What does that footage actually reveal? We see an adult male, medium build, sporting a highly visible mustache. Analysts and commentators routinely flag his unusually prominent eyebrows as a dead giveaway, cementing them as a crucial distinguishing characteristic. He wears a distinct pinky ring, unique hand jewelry that agents could trace back to specific retail or online purchase histories, or that an acquaintance might recognize. Look closely at his front pocket. An antenna extends straight upward. It sits awkwardly, jutting out with the exact rigid profile you expect from a two-way handheld radio, requiring an external antenna. You do not see that shape from a smartphone. The FBI released this video strategically. They need a citizen to stare at that face, ring, mustache, and eyebrows until recognition hits. Law enforcement knows the ultimate identification tool beats facial recognition software, forensic reconstruction, or satellite imagery every single time. The ultimate tool is a living human remembering that exact face from their neighborhood, workplace, family, or social circle. Somebody out there knows this man. Those sharp features jumping off the screen give the right set of eyes everything needed to make a positive identification. A prominent mustache rules out thousands. A pinky ring violently narrows the field. Eyebrows striking enough to make independent analysts take notes do not fade from memory. This exact man marched straight up to Nancy Guthrie's door. He let the lens capture his face because he arrogantly assumed the camera recorded absolutely nothing. He guessed wrong, and now his image haunts the internet. But what if retired Detective Lisa Miller caught something even worse? If that pocket object really is a handheld radio and not a smartphone? That single realization unlocks a terrifying new implication. A voice waited on the other end. Two-way radios demand two active operators. Who held the second radio, and what did they do? Break down the harsh logistics of what the evidence proves happened that dark night. Nancy Guthrie possesses enough strength that no attacker easily manages her without meticulous planning. She is a 66-year-old woman, absolutely. But securing transportation and forcibly moving a fighting human being against her will, from inside a private home to a waiting vehicle without triggering a massive scene visible to surviving cameras, requires a two-person team. At the bare minimum, a second attacker makes the job significantly easier. One operative holds down the getaway vehicle while watching the street, freeing the lead attacker to handle the physical forced entry. A tactical radio guarantees real-time communication while dodging permanent cellular carrier records. It enforces strict operational discipline. The driver knows exactly when to idle the engine. The point man knows the exact second the vehicle hits its mark. They can instantly abort if something goes sideways. They pivot immediately if a neighbor flips a porch light on. This intense level of coordination drastically changes the entire character of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. A lone wolf, even a meticulously prepared one, generates a completely different risk profile than a coordinated two-man strike team. Two attackers leave two sets of potential witnesses, two separate purchase histories, and two distinct phone records. Even if they powered those phones down during the hit, analysts extract proximity data, tracking their movements in the hours right before and after. Two suspects eventually talk, whether in person, digitally, or through an intermediary. Every new body added to a criminal enterprise introduces a massive new vulnerability. One person can take a dark secret to the grave. Two people only keep a secret until one cracks. The FBI actively weaponizes this fact. Hunting the man who took Nancy Guthrie means looking past the guy standing on her porch. A second operator means a second viable subject, that ghost suspect, the accomplice who perfectly dodged the camera lenses. The one feeling totally insulated from the public video release gives investigators a glaring loose thread they are violently pulling right now. This accomplice theory opens a chilling new dimension, circling right back to the glaring knowledge problem we flagged earlier. How did the mastermind map out Nancy's security setup with such terrifying precision? They possessed granular intelligence detailing the exact status of her cameras, calculating which neighbor's camera had the best angle, and identifying the time window offering flawless operational cover. Staking out a house rarely yields that level of tactical intelligence. Sometimes criminals buy that data through a simple conversation with somebody directly inside the home. An inside man Nancy actually knew and completely trusted. They watched her every move for weeks, mapping out a flawless strategy without triggering a single alarm. We naturally focus on the man at the door and the getaway driver idling in the dark. But the true architect never even stepped on the property, a phantom orchestrator who provided the exact intelligence that made Nancy vanish. 3 players, 3 separate threads. Consequently, the FBI refuses to approach this manhunt as a solo operation. But they left a digital fingerprint. That fingerprint stems from an aggressive forensic dragnet the intruders failed to anticipate. Enter the geofence warrant. This reverse location search empowers agents to legally corner tech giants, primarily Google, forcing them to dump user data for every device pinging inside a defined geographic grid during an exact time frame. Here is the reality. The FBI draws a virtual perimeter around Nancy Guthrie's street and demands Google expose accounts tied to Google Maps, Gmail, or Android platforms. Any Google service broadcasting inside that designated zone on the night of February 1st instantly becomes a traceable coordinate. Every smartphone sitting in that neighborhood functions as a tracking beacon. Find 2 separate devices moving in tandem with documented associations to a specific suspect or known criminal network, and that data solidifies into indisputable proof. A digital trap waiting to spring. This trap actively puts criminals behind bars. Federal courts secure kidnapping convictions using these warrants continuously. Defense attorneys routinely attack these searches, claiming Fourth Amendment violations. Yet the legal foundation stands bulletproof, particularly regarding federal abduction investigations. Our frontman on the porch undoubtedly knew enough to ditch his personal cell. He operated a burner. But what about the getaway driver waiting down the block? The lookout clutching that two-way radio probably lacked that exact same tactical discipline. If their phone registered near that address on February 1st, and their footprint traces directly back to the porch suspect via past GPS coordinates, previous text logs, or shared physical locations, that vital link currently waits on a server for a judge's signature. The primary suspect meticulously sanitized his pockets before walking up those steps. He fatally neglected to check the pockets of the man idling in the dark. And that brings us to the door. That front door approach holds the key, perfectly decoded by Jim Clemente. His breakdown remains the sharpest piece of analytical insight currently available, yet the public largely ignores its true weight. Listen to his exact phrasing carefully. Quote, "He was not prepared to deal with the door camera. He did not have tools in his hands to force his way into the house in the front." Dissect that statement. He was not prepared to deal with the door camera. This explicitly proves the intruder actively chose to leave the primary security lens completely intact. He did not march up those front steps planning to rip the hardware off the brick. He approached that entrance fundamentally believing the lock would disengage without a fight. Quote, "He did not have tools in his hands to force his way into the house in the front. His hands stayed entirely empty, visibly bare, and deliberately non-threatening. The posture mirrored a casual evening drop-in." How exactly do you bypass a locked entryway without breaking glass? Only two ways exist. You possess a physical key, proving an intimately close connection and pre-existing access to the property, or the target willingly unlatches the deadbolt from the inside. This demands the suspect executed a flawless deception that tricked Nancy into welcoming a stranger, or she recognized a familiar face and trusted them enough to forget basic midnight etiquette. We must acknowledge a third grim reality where the deadbolt sat unlatched beforehand, or yielded seamlessly for an unrelated mechanical reason. Regardless, the behavioral psychology driving this approach overwhelmingly points toward an expected, frictionless entry. Consider the empty hands, the brazen frontal walk-up, and the glaring lack of breaching equipment. This perfectly matches a predator expecting immediate compliance, or a barrier that would simply fold. But why the absolute confidence? That confidence stems from meticulous preparation. Combine this profile with everything else: the intimate awareness of Nancy's security placements, the localized signal jamming, and the tactical coordination required by handheld radios. A highly precise picture emerges. They never wanted a violent blitz. They engineered this exclusively for seamless access. Breach the perimeter, secure the asset, and vanish into the night with disabled cameras before chaos could erupt. Physical trauma might have followed. Nobody knows what unfolded beyond that threshold, but the man on the porch never planned to kick his way inside. He stood there, fully anticipating a polite invitation. That subtle distinction reveals a massive operational clue for federal agents. He mapped out a definitive strategy for the interior floor plan, not just the front yard. Executing that subsequent phase demanded Nancy's direct cooperation, either forced or freely given, or it required rendering her completely incapacitated before a struggle ensued. Either scenario demands a deeply intimate understanding of who she was, not merely where she slept. The FBI rarely chases standard missing person reports. When the Bureau steps in, the entire game changes. A suspect thinks he erased his digital footprint, completely unaware he just triggered a massive joint investigation with local law enforcement. The moment federal resources deploy, pulling the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit and their technical forensics capabilities into the fight, everything escalates. Investigators only make that move when a crime crosses a dangerous threshold that local jurisdictions simply cannot address alone. In the missing persons world, that line gets crossed. The second evidence suggests a victim was dragged across state lines, or when the crime demands federal jurisdiction, or when the immense technical and forensic resources required to investigate drastically outpace what local agencies provide. So what triggered the feds here? The FBI diving into the Nancy Guthrie case, aggressively collaborating with Google to recover residual back-end footage, gives us the answer. Their deep examination of the Wi-Fi jammer theory, alongside Sheriff Nanos and his team, and their hyperactive role in analyzing that doorbell footage, proves investigators refuse to treat this as some standard local matter. They are officially treating this as something much bigger. Sheriff Nanos confirmed his team, and the FBI explored every angle of the jammer theory, which you never hear in a simple missing persons case. Cops only say that about an investigation carrying massive federal dimensions. But what did they find? Ripping that footage from Google back-end systems acts as a giant neon sign, signaling the severity of this investigation. Extracting tech company infrastructure data takes serious leverage. We are talking about raw data absent from the standard user-facing layer. Securing files that demand complex legal processes and elite technical expertise to interpret is never a casual event. Agents must execute a formal legal request. They must force cooperation from the Google Law Enforcement Response Team. Someone investigating had to understand system architecture well enough to even know how to ask the right question. Does residual data survive in the back end even without an active cloud subscription? An investigator asked that exact question, and Google handed over the answer. That is wildly sophisticated forensic work. They executed the kind of work that resurrects footage a suspect fully believed was gone forever. And this exposes his fatal mistake. It matters not just for this specific footage, but for what it reveals about the massive gap between his knowledge and the investigators. He understood networks well enough to jam the Wi-Fi. He understood the tech enough to account for the cloud sync pathway, but completely missed the back-end residual layer. He was good, but not good enough. So, why risk exposing what they found? When the FBI releases surveillance footage to the public and asks for identification assistance, they make a highly calculated decision. They decide the footage looks clear enough, and the physical traits stand out so sharply that the massive benefit of public identification completely outweighs the investigative risk of tipping off the suspect. Dropping this doorbell footage into the public sphere at all tells you something massive. They firmly believe someone will recognize this person. Look at the mustache. When hunting a fugitive, a mustache goes beyond a minor detail because it represents a highly deliberate facial modification choice. People have seen it consistently. Friends, family, co-workers, and neighbors who stood next to this guy leading up to February 1st will recognize that mustache immediately. It does not naturally blend into a crowd. Now look at the eyebrows. Multiple independent analysts flagged the specific eyebrows here as highly distinctive. You hit a massive point of convergence when entirely separate observers stare at the same footage without coordinating notes and arrive at the exact same conclusion. That convergence carries serious weight. Those eyebrows demand attention. They will be remembered by anyone who knows this face. He registers as a medium adult male, which narrows the field when combined with his other traits, even if generic on its own. You combine that build with the rest of his features to form a highly accurate composite picture. But what piece of evidence ultimately brings him down? The pinky ring stands out as potentially the most dangerously traceable physical detail in this entire footage, far beyond his face. Guys wearing distinctive rings on very specific fingers never take them off. The people in their lives notice them every day. A pinky ring does not blend in as everyday jewelry for the vast majority. He chose it. It acts as a statement. You can bet his friends, family members, and colleagues remember seeing that piece of metal on him regularly. More importantly, jewelry leaves a massive paper trail. Investigators can track custom rings or pieces purchased from specific retailers or online markets, right down to their exact style, material, and design. If the ring features a distinctive design, and forensic image analysts maximize what the footage provides, investigators now have a direct pathway straight from that ring to a purchase record, a specific retailer, a custom craft maker, or a local engraver. The suspect walked right into the frame thinking he was invisible, but he was wearing his jewelry. He bet his freedom on a simple deletion. He just never expected the FBI to call Google. That footage survived, and now federal agents and the public possess it. Investigators documented and distributed the suspect's build, his facial features, his jewelry, and the device tucked inside his pocket. Federal agents process those details around the clock, working alongside the collective intelligence of every citizen tracking this case. Agents recovered those frames from data he believed he destroyed. He failed. Investigators firmly established those targeted Wi-Fi disruptions. Multiple homeowners confirmed the exact outages. The FBI and the local sheriff scrutinized the signal jammer theory entirely. Are they actively tracking a purchase trail for that specific jamming hardware? Investigators refuse to announce those moves publicly until that trail produces a solid target they can strike. But this investigation breathes. That theory dominates the table right now. Federal laws regulating jammer sales, hand the FBI serious tools that criminal operators rarely anticipate when planning a strike. Buyers focus entirely on what that jammer actually does. They completely ignore the import records, the payment trails, the delivery addresses, and the federal subpoenas targeting their purchase history. But who else helped him? That accomplice angle remains incredibly real. If a second person managed the vehicle, monitored the radio, or provided background intelligence, investigators possess a second subject. Identifying another subject immediately generates another stack of records and a fresh set of potential witnesses. It creates a massive failure point in whatever coordinated lie these people think they can maintain. Any seasoned investigator knows conspiracies carry a strict shelf life. Keep the group small, extend that life. Yet even the tightest inner circle eventually crumbles under the crushing weight of forensic evidence. The forensics here run far deeper than this suspect ever realized. Nancy Guthrie remains missing since the early hours of February 2nd. Her family waits in agony. The hunt stays fiercely active. Authorities announce no arrests yet, but the exact picture of that night and the person responsible comes into sharper focus every single day. Millions now watch the footage he never knew existed. Agents completely penetrated the technology he trusted to mask his tracks. Federal statutes governing his chosen tools carve out aggressive investigative pathways he surely never saw coming. He prepared for almost everything, but he never prepared for the FBI to call Google, and he never prepared for that back-end data to survive. He never prepared for the world to see his face, his pinky ring, his mustache, and that visible antenna bulging in his pocket. Someone watching this video right now knows that face. You know him from your neighborhood, your family, your workplace, or your social circle. Someone instantly recognizes that mustache, those distinct eyebrows, and that specific pinky ring. But will they make the call? If you hold any information regarding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, you absolutely must act. The FBI Tucson field office takes tips right now. Dial 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can submit anonymous tips online at tips.fbi.gov. Authorities announced a major reward. Details leading to Nancy or exposing this suspect could pay out significantly more than anyone realizes. We still write the ending to what happened to Nancy Guthrie on February 1st. Detectives ruthlessly build their case. Agents keep pulling every thread. But what remains beyond question today? That damning footage absolutely exists. The entire world sees his face. Whatever countermeasures he deployed to erase that video completely failed. He made a single mistake. He built his plan on one fatally wrong assumption. And that is exactly how these cases finally break. They rarely shatter through dramatic confessions. They break when one wrong assumption leaves a loose thread. Federal agents take that thread, apply endless time, pour in massive resources, and utilize deep forensic capability until his operation unravels. We track every single development in this live investigation. If you do not follow this channel yet, hit the button on your screen right now. We deliver every crucial update in the Nancy Guthrie case the exact second it hits our desk. Do you want to grasp the complete forensic picture of this intense manhunt? From the precise vehicle timeline to the DNA evidence and the behavioral analysis, find the full series linked in the description and our pinned comment. Every jagged piece of this puzzle locks together. The more you understand those pieces, the clearer you see exactly why agents sit so close to a capture right now. Nancy deserves answers today. Her family demands justice. This ghost made a mistake, and federal agents forensically hunt that mistake down, tracking it relentlessly straight to his front door.